Alright guys, in this video, we're not only taking a look at probably the dirtiest car that I have detailed in the last 2 or 3 years, but we're also talking about all things auto detailing. This is going to be one of the most informative and probably detailed videos that I've posted recently, from products we're using to business strategies we're using, conversations that I use with customers, and just all in all checking out this horrible, horrible detail. Now, to give you guys a little bit of context here, what you're looking at here is a detail that I did about 11 or 12 months ago, about a year ago, for a client of mine who obviously has children, and this is just kind of their car that they say, hey, to heck with it, this one's going to get dirty and there's nothing we can do about it. So rather than keeping it maintained, they just say, hey, every so often we're going to get it detailed to the maximum degree. And that's why they called me and said, listen, can you get this interior done for us? So everything from the leather seats to the impossible carpeting that's underneath the removable floor mat carpeting here, to the dashboard, to the vinyl, rubber, plastic, everything here is pretty much in as bad as condition as it could possibly be in. And you might recognize this vehicle. I actually posted this detail, this full interior detail, about a year ago when I filmed it and did the job, but it was a totally silent video. It was no voiceover, no nothing other than some music, I believe. And here I wanted to dive into the situation and the business side of what this detail entailed so that you guys had a little bit of a better context and kind of full picture view of what something like this looks like in my world, just by peeling back the curtain a little bit. So first of all, you guys saw that this is just in seriously rough condition. This is one of those vehicles that's an all-dayer. You're just not going to get away with doing this in a couple of hours. First of all, let me just talk about a little bit of the products that you're going to see over and over again here. Number one, obviously, I'm using just my general purpose interior microfiber towels. I've got an all-purpose cleaner that I'm going to hook up below as well. The one that I'm using nowadays is the Citrus Safe Touch all-purpose cleaner from Renegade. That is not what I'm using here. Here, I'm using the Auto Magic all-purpose cleaner, and I will hook up that one as well because they are both fantastic products, but I can just say from my experience now and the products that I've been using recently, if I could go back and use a different APC, it would have been the Citrus Safe Touch, and it also looks very similar to that one in the bottle there. I've got my regular detailing brushes here. These days, I'm using my work stuff detailing brushes, of course, not what I'm using here, but the ones that I'll hook up are much higher quality. And then I'm going to be using my steamer, my VX5000 steamer, which is going to make an appearance in pretty much every area of this vehicle. Now, first of all, what I'm doing here is what I call like the funnel method. It basically means I go from real general to real specific. When a vehicle reaches this level of disgusting condition, there's no way to go about it except for just attacking it head on. So for example, to contextualize what I'm talking about down to this door panel here, you can see that I'm just spraying my all-purpose cleaner everywhere, agitating it as aggressively as possible with my brush, with my non-abrasive scrub pad, with my Magic Eraser, and then wiping it up using my steamer to get even more detailed and to kind of rinse certain panels. As I do that, I begin to get more and more specific. So of course, at first I was spraying my all-purpose cleaner everywhere, and then I'm using my steamer to get in all the cracks and crevices. Then I'm diving into the cup holders. Then I'm diving into the tiny textured pieces of the leathers. You can see now in the video, I'm able to focus in more, that I've got the brunt of the work done. This is how I suggest you guys go after really dirty vehicles. You just go from really general to really specific. There's no other real way to do this. Of course, you guys can see how much I'm having to rinse and repeat. This is going to be a common theme throughout this video, but I'm going to have to continue to do things over and over again, utilizing the same process. It's kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger was talking about how to get, who gets the biggest in the gym. And he said, whoever does the most reps and sets. That's what I'm doing here. It's reps and sets, all right? Sets, different sets, and repetition. Same set, repetition. And so I'm rinsing and repeating the same exact process, spraying, agitating, mopping up, rinsing, mopping up, spraying, agitating, mopping up, rinsing, mopping up, doing it over and over and over again. And of course, pulling out some different tools here and there. Now, as I go about this and finish this door panel, we're going to move into the steering wheel and kind of the console area. But I want to give you guys a little bit of insight of how my conversation with this customer went. This is what I would call kind of my ideal situation and my ideal customer. I think in the beginning stages of most people's auto detailing businesses, we all sort of experience a kind of larger portion of customers trying to negotiate with us on price. And in my experience, as you grow, that becomes the 1% of your business, not the 50% of your business. Rarely do customers ever do that with me anymore. But oftentimes I get customers like this. This is actually a very sweet lady. We actually went to church together when I was in college, and when I did her vehicle. So anyway, she actually called me and said, listen, here's the condition of my car. And most of the time, if you guys run an auto detailing business, you know that people are generally pretty dishonest, or maybe not dishonest, but let's say undereducated on how to communicate the condition of their vehicle. Most people are going to say something like, yeah, my vehicle's pretty clean. And when I hear that nowadays, I almost laugh to myself because I now know what that means to the average customer. Pretty clean means, hey, this is going to be several hours because it ain't pretty clean, alrighty? This is a situation where that did not happen. Sometimes you find the gold nugget of a customer who's very situationally aware and they know that their vehicle is in terrible condition, as she did. So when she called me, she said, listen, Luke, I'm not going to lie to you. And whenever they start like that, that's always the best. Luke, I'm not going to lie to you. You know you need to brace yourself for impact. Luke, I'm not going to lie to you. My car is not something I take care of. We totally let it go. It's in horrible condition. I do not expect anything to be perfect, I promise you. It's a great thing when your customer brings up the things that you normally have to bring up in the conversation. In other words, most of the time in the detailing business, you will find that you will have to bring up to your customer the fact that the expectation cannot be perfection. You will have to bring up the point to your customer that their car, while they think it's in pretty good condition, is still going to take a fair amount of time because of the type of details that you work within. When your customer is situationally aware enough to bring those up to you, and it just kind of offloads it off of you in the conversation, and it just feels really good for that to happen once in a while. That is what happened here. This is the kind of customer you want simply because she did all of the heavy lifting in the conversation. Number one, she said, hey, this is in horrible condition. Number two, I don't expect it to be perfected. Number three, just tell me what you'll charge me to get this done. I can't remember exactly what I charged her, but I can tell you just from the way my pricing is structured, I charged her at a very minimum of $300. It absolutely was not less than that. I believe it was closer to $375. However, I charged her a minimum of $300. She, of course, did not bat an eye at that charge or at that price simply because she braced herself going into the conversation because she was aware of the condition of the vehicle. Those 3 points are generally the three main, maybe what I would say are barriers in the conversation in the auto detailing world, and it's worth talking about. Number one, communicating condition. Number two, communicating the fact that expectations must be set in a certain place. And number three, communicating price. And hopefully the two communication points before that lead into the price and help that conversation go more smoothly. But those are going to be three areas of your detailing business that are going to be more bothersome and have to be practiced, those 3 points of the conversation. I've also noticed a pattern in many of these kind of customers or these kind of jobs when I see vehicles, and again, these days, I really don't ever see vehicles like this. I just say no to these jobs. I don't really want to do this anymore. However, when I saw or when I see, if I decide to take it on today, vehicles like this, and I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below about this, because this may be a regional thing. Of course, I live right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and so we're Southerners here, and we have Southern hospitality. And so that being said, when I see vehicles like this, the owner of the vehicle generally is so aware of the condition that they tend to overcompensate sometimes in the conversation in an effort of what I would say is in an effort to make you really let's say, want to take on the job because they realize how unattractive a job like this is, which probably plays a role in why they have absolutely no interest in negotiating when it comes to pricing. Now, I'm getting kind of into like what I would call customer psychology here, but I would love to hear in the comments below, have you guys noticed that when you get really disgusting cars like this, and I don't know how often you do or how frequent you do, and comment below, let me know how often you see cars like this, but when you do you find that the customer is almost trying to overcompensate because they almost feel like they're putting a burden on you by asking you to do this job? They're kind of embarrassed of the condition of their car. I've noticed that to be kind of a recurring pattern. Maybe it's a Southern thing, maybe it's sort of our culture down here, people being, polite all the time and all that sort of stuff. But I'd love to know, you guys in the Northeast, Midwest, out way far west in California, does that happen to you? Now, the other thing you guys are going to notice here as you guys are watching, number one, I didn't speed up this video a ton because I really wanted you guys to get the full effect of just what an intense job something like this is, but you're seeing how detailed I'm being here. One of the things when it comes to detailing and particularly really disgusting cars like this is that you don't just have one area that's really disgusting or one obvious area that's disgusting, but one of the problems you run into is that when you clean the obvious areas, like for example, the face of the steering wheel that I'm already finished with now, it stands in such contrast to the other parts of the steering wheel, or for that matter, the other areas of the vehicle, that you almost have to be hyper aware that you really don't miss anything. Of course, not that you miss anything on a regular basis. My point is, because a car is left to get so extremely dirty, when something is clean, it is very obvious, even to the person who does not detail on a regular basis and doesn't necessarily have that eye. To the average customer, to the average person, it's extremely obvious what has been detailed and what hasn't. For example, on this car, you will notice, and you can probably rewind and go back forward in the video to see the contrast or to see the juxtaposition. What you're going to find in many vehicles like this that have a lot of that hard kind of rubber, plastic, vinyl sort of, what would I call it, material, particularly like on the door panels and the dash, and that tan color that also is, of course, on the leather, there almost is what I call like this blanket of dirt that's not like dust that can just be wiped off. It has to be steamed off. It has to be, you have to use a magic eraser to get it off. You have to use a non-abrasive scrub pad to get it off, and some strong degreaser or some pretty concentrated all-purpose cleaner. And what you'll find is that in the grooves of the leather, in the texture of the leather, in the grooves of the dashboard, the texture of that material, same thing with the door panels, and you'll see it probably pretty prominently with door panels, you actually are kind of ripping off that layer of dirt and that blanket of dirt so that it looks so much better that you basically look like a superhero, but you almost are deceived into thinking that the entire car is a color that it's not. It's a certain tan color or a certain lighter gray color that it's not. It almost looks like it's darker or supposed to be darker than it is, and then when you pull off, you like rip off that layer of dirt, you find how light the interior is actually and how bright the interior is supposed to look. And so this is what I mean in saying it's a really important thing that you focus in and don't miss anything, and I think that's going to be something you see as a trend in this video, how I look at different angles, get in every crack and crevice. I kind of almost have to contort my neck and my body at certain points to get and make sure my eyes can see every area. But even on something as simple as the steering wheel, you're seeing how much time I'm spending on this area. Now, one of the questions that gets asked all the time, of course, is can you use a steamer on those electrical pieces like you're seeing me do? You saw me steam those buttons really quickly. This is something that I would just say you have to take experience and make your own decision. I use a steamer in really trashed vehicles like this pretty often, especially even on this on the radio area, these buttons area. Of course, there's danger with that. Of course, you could hurt something, but with the right experience, with the right caution and common sense leading you, you are not going to hurt anything. Obviously, I'm not holding the steamer at point blank range for 5 minutes at a time sitting there. You guys are going to see I go over it very quickly, but I make sure I get in all of those seams, all of those cracks and crevices. Even so, I spent a fair amount of time on the air vents. Reason being is because in a vehicle like this, and if you've ever detailed a vehicle like this, you will know that this is true. with most air vents, while they can just be dusted with a simple dusting brush or detailing brush and you can knock that surface dirt off, this is not the case with air vents like this in a car like this. That dust and that dirt has so stuck to the blades of the air vent, you literally have to chemically clean it and agitate it with a brush and steam it in order to fix it. So here you guys see I'm steaming all over those buttons, but once again, going over those very quickly, holding the steamer away from it. But inevitably, something like this is going to be necessary to get into that level of detail. Of course, it depends on what kind of level of detail you're going to do in your business. But for me, I really don't do anything except for 100%, highest level of perfection that is possible. Now, one thing to keep in mind here when I was talking about my conversation with the customer on the front end, how she brought up the fact that she knows it's not going to be perfected, she knows it's in horrible condition, and I can only do so much. I will say, even when the customer says that to me and they tell me that they know that and they tell me they're aware of that, I still make it a point to have a conversation with them in an attempt to make sure they know where the expectation needs to be put. What I mean by that is this: I will say something to my customer even in a situation like this when she brings it up like this. Customer, let's call her customer A. Customer A, I'm really glad you said that. That's actually something I bring up with all of my customers because believe it or not, some people will give me vehicles like this and expect it to be completely perfect. It sounds like you are not one of those people, but one of the things I always like to do is just go over a couple major areas that are going to be affected by the extreme dirt here and explain to you sort of why they're not going to be perfected, but also just kind of what you can expect from a visual aspect so that you understand why and what you should be seeing here. And it's not because I've missed something, it's simply because of the condition of the vehicle. And while I would love to be able to wave a magic wand over it, I simply can't. It's why I like to say prevention is always better than the cure. And then I go into just explaining some of these major areas that I explain to every customer. Hey, this is something you should expect here. This is something you should expect here. And this is something you should expect here. You will see this, this, and this, so that in the end, they are not surprised in any way whatsoever. Now, all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn on some music, let you guys watch just a little bit of what this looks like before we get to the headliner of the car. Alright guys, we've made it to the headliner. So there's a couple things that are happening here that I want to talk through, not just process, but also business-wise here. In my detailing world, we'll start with the business stuff. In my detailing world, headliner in many ways is something that I don't have to address very often. And because of that, it is something that I definitely factor in a fair amount of additional cost for. The reason I say that is because, number one, headliner is generally something people are not all that worried about in my experience. Your experience could be different, but I will tell you, just in a lot of years of doing this, most customers, especially when their vehicle is this dirty, they don't actually care that you focus on the headliner. They're much more concerned about things like seats and carpets. In fact, in my opinion, the seats and the carpets are the two biggest concerns with any customer at any given time, just across the board. Now, secondly, when I do have to address the headliner, this is something that I explain in a lot of detail to my customer, and I explain why it's going to take a little bit of extra money in order to get this done. Reason being is because, first of all, headliner in the first place is extremely difficult to deal with, but secondly, when it's extremely dirty, it just adds a significant amount of time that I'd really rather not put my focus into. But once again, when my customer wants it that way, I'm not in a position to argue with them. So the process that we're using here is very simply a drill brush, my chemical APC, and a microfiber towel. The reason why I'm addressing this particular headliner in this particular way, and I know some of you are saying, man, you're using way too much liquid, way too much chemical. Well, number one, this headliner has never been detailed before, so it's not like there's been water or liquid or chemical introduced to this headliner at any point at all ever. But secondly, I have probably detailed hundreds of headliners at this point. Never have I ever had one begin to sag. And so while yes, I don't suggest that you introduce a ton of liquid to headliners, there are certain situations where it's not exactly a black and white issue, and you can address it in a more specific way that you wouldn't necessarily do across the board. The white drill brush works incredibly in a situation like this because it is not going to fray the headliner. And when you're dealing with traditional headliner like this, where it's basically a piece of cloth with an interface foam in between and then glued to the roof, this is actually my favorite kind of headliner to detail, not because I like detailing headliner, but because out of all the kinds of headliner you could run into, this is what I would consider the easiest to detail. It's basically that kind of mesh stretched material, again, glued to that foam interface. The white drill brush makes my job extremely easy in a situation like this. And the biggest kind of strategy here that actually seems really simple is actually my microfiber towel. The biggest piece of advice I can give you guys when you're detailing headliner like this, which is what I would call the traditional headliner, is make sure that each time you're mopping it up, you are using a completely dry microfiber towel. If your microfiber towel has been wet at all, please switch to a new one. This is going to keep things from wicking. It's going to keep things from drying and you seeing that ring of those stains that were not actually properly cared for, and you weren't able to see them until they were dry. Your microfiber towel has a ton to do with this. By the way, guys, smash that like button if you like the long hair in this video. Thank God I cut it, but man, those were the glory days, right? So smash the like button if you guys like the long hair. Now, that being said, you guys can see I'm going to address every single area of the car, including even, this headliner on the front area here. But you guys can imagine what a amount of time, what kind of significant time this adds to my detail. I want to explain a little bit about how you guys can think about it or even communicate it when it comes to pricing and when you're trying to think through the additional time spend you're going to have to go through when detailing different areas of the car, like, for example, this headliner. One of the best things that you can do when you're talking to a customer and you're trying to determine time is have a specific set of questions that you go through with every customer. In many ways, the best way to develop a question list like this is to determine which areas for you are the most difficult or most time consuming when you're detailing. Of course, I could give you guys kind of a list of what I think those generally are, but it's a little bit too general. Of course, the carpets and seats are going to be general time sucks, and headliner, when it's dirty, is going to be kind of a time suck as well. But you can form specific questions around the way you detail, the tools you use, the time it normally takes you, and in asking your or having a sort of consistent list that you go through with your customer each time based around these specific areas, you will get extremely accurate, what I would say, pictures of the condition of the vehicle vehicle, down to like a 30-minute window of you being able to estimate exactly how much time it takes you. I have that, and I suggest you do it. It also adds kind of an edge of professionalism to your detailing. I think when you're able to go through that list with your customer, they look at you as an expert. And even when you communicate it really simply in a sense of saying, hey, customer, I have a question list that I actually like to go through with each customer just because it allows me to get a full picture of what I'm getting into. And this way, when I price things for you, I'm not going to give you any unexpected kind of, or what would I say? I'm not going to give you any surprises at the end because I didn't understand the condition. While you've done a great job explaining to me thus far, I do want to go through just a couple of these questions just to make sure that I know exactly what I'm getting into. And you can put it on yourself and put the burden on you. And customers actually really appreciate that in my experience. Now, guys, all that being said, the last thing I would say, just to retouch on the microfiber towel issue here, because this is actually a big issue with Headliner, making sure that your microfiber towel is totally dry. The other thing I would say is to make sure to fold your microfiber towel into fourths. I have tried to clean Headliner kind of like I addressed other areas of the car where I don't even fold my microfiber towel. I just want to use it really quickly to mop it up. You want it to be folded into fourths where you have a bunch of cushion for absorption. The more you can absorb, the better your headliner is going to turn out. And you guys are going to see in this video, this headliner turned out incredibly. I mean, it really came out really fantastically. But that's because I probably used 6 to 7 microfiber towels when I was doing this whole thing, and I always keep it folded into fourths, so there's plenty of almost like padding. And of course, I could go into more detail about that, but just take my word for it. Keep plenty of padding in your microfiber towel, and meaning like absorption almost as you're drying it. And when it gets even a little bit too wet, throw it out, get a new one. Now, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and continue watching the detail here. And again, this is extreme detailing. So this video is a really good way to compare your own services or your own process to what I'm doing here. Comment below if you guys do anything a little bit differently, and you can point out exactly what it is that you do differently and what might even make it easier for guys to spend less time but still getting those great results. And we will reconvene here when we get to the carpets. All right, we are now at the carpets, and you guys are going to see that these are probably some of the most disgusting carpets I've ever seen. There's purple sand, there's trash everywhere, there's mud everywhere. And then on top of that, those runners that the seats sit in to move up and down are full of stuff, which is just more hard to reach areas. You guys can see I'm pulling out stuff from the trunk here, from these areas that, maybe you guys didn't even know these existed. But to top all of this off, to just icing on the cake, this is the Impossible carpeting, which is basically like a rat's nest of felt. It is not traditional carpeting, not traditional fibers sticking up and dirt falling in between them, but rather it's like a labyrinth maze of just really cheap fabric. Now, there's several things that I want to talk about in this sort of carpet section here that I think are extremely important to keep in mind. Number one, let's talk about the business aspect of this. When I'm talking to my customer, this is one of the main areas that I really, really highlight with them, because the condition of this vehicle, just as a general rule, is going to keep it from being perfected, okay? But secondly, the amount of time that I have to spend on the rest of the car, just forgetting about the carpets completely, the amount of time that it's going to take to spend on the rest of the car to even get this remotely looking better is extremely significant. But then to put the carpets on top of that, the nature of this kind of carpet and the condition of this carpet, to put this on top, this is going to add hours to the job, to even improve it by like one order of magnitude, okay? We're not talking about perfecting it. And for that reason, there are certain things with regard to the Impossible carpeting in this kind of condition that I always communicate to my customer. One of those things is going to be this. Customer A, blah, blah, blah. I explain the Impossible carpet. I explain the nature of it to them. I explain to them what it is. Because of that, even after I get finished, there are going to be some crumbs. There's going to be probably a little bit of sand here and there. There might be some pet hair here and there. There might be some dirt here and there. Because truth be told, I could literally spend 3, 4, 5 hours just on the carpeting, and it would still not be perfected. I can blast compressed air, I can blast steam in it, and you will still see dirt flying out of that felt. What I'm going to do is raise it to the highest level of perfection that is within reasonable and rational possibility. Now, because the customer has already braced themselves, because they understand the condition of the carpet, they are expecting me to say something like that, but it's always something I make clear anyways. And you're going to note that after the video, when you guys see just a brief little look at the after result, you will see some of those crumbs, some of those tiny little pieces of grass or dirt or sand in certain parts of this carpeting. Now, to get more to the detailing section here, this is like the ultimate rinse and repeat method that you're going to see here. It's a constant spray, scrub, steam, mop up, and I'm using different size drill brushes here to get in all of the nooks and crannies here. This is it is going to get worse before it gets better situation. And just so you guys know, the carpeting in this condition is what I call like a significant player in this detail. There are certain areas of this detail that are going to take significant amounts of time. So for example, while the steering wheel took some time, it doesn't take a significant amount of time. While the leather seats are going to take a little bit of time, because they're in such bad condition and so damaged, there's only going to be so much I can do. But the carpet is going to add more than just 30 or 45 minutes. This is going to add a couple hours to the detail. So while I'm speeding it up really quickly here, this is of course not a legitimate representation of how much time it takes, but you guys are getting to see a dramatic before and after in a very small period of time. That being said, this is a perfect example of the sometimes you just have to let it go philosophy that I talk about in many of my videos. This will never be perfected. And so the question is, how much time do you spend in certain areas here before you just say, okay, now it's time to stop doing the carpets, or at least to stop doing this area of the carpet, and it's time to just move on. I guess everybody's going to have a different answer to that question, but after 3 times of rinsing and repeating this method, I am going to move on. The trunk in this case is a little bit easier just because the kids are not sitting in the trunk, and obviously the kids are really what damaged the vehicle here. But that being said, there is a very clear point of it no longer makes sense for me to continue doing this here. Now, the reason why I'm such a stickler when it comes to communication, and even when my customer is telling me and almost like speaking the language that I want them to speak over the phone, as far as them telling me where their expectations are, and you get this kind of, quote unquote, perfect customer where it doesn't take a lot of discussion to explain to them the nature of detailing. The reason why I still explain things and walk through things with them is simply because they are paying me a significant amount of money to do this job. And when you start getting into $300, $400, $500 jobs, there is a certain obligation that you have to make sure that your customer at some deeper level than the average realizes that even sinking several $100s into a job like this is not going to perfect things. I think it's kind of the obligation of the detailer to make sure that's clear. I've had customers where I've not made that clear before, and it just ends really badly. So I encourage you guys, even when they speak your language and they're speaking detailer and they're saying all the right things, continue to focus on the major areas that come up consistently as patterns in the detailing industry and in your detailing business, and make sure you touch on those areas. This is also one of the reasons why I've simplified my product or my service and packaging system. And I'm not going to get into that because I break that down really deeply in the online course that I'm building right now that's not quite finished yet. So I'm not going to get into that right this second. But the very last thing I'm going to do to this interior before I protect it, which I didn't really show in this video just because I wanted to hit the major areas, is I'm going to use the drill brush to really deep clean and chemically clean these floor mats. And then I'm just going to pressure wash them completely. Now, I want to tell you guys real quickly about the after conversation with my customer. This was one of those just like great situations where even afterwards my customer came and said, "Oh my gosh, my car looks so incredible." This is one of the benefits to doing jobs like this. Even when you don't detail it to 100% because it just doesn't make financial sense for the customer, it doesn't make time sense for you, it's just not going to be possible. Even though you are not perfecting it, and even though all of the set expectations that I explained on the front end are being experienced afterwards, meaning she sees some of the crumbs, she sees the imperfections, she sees the damage, even in the midst of all of that, they're still gawking and gazing because even with it not being 100%, the 75% or the 65% improvement is so dramatic because the before condition was so disgusting that it's almost impossible for the customer not to gawk and gaze and say, "Oh my gosh, what an incredible job this guy did." That is one of the reasons why, while I get the aversion that many detailers have to taking on jobs like this, it's actually one of the huge benefits to taking on jobs like this, particularly in the beginning of your business, because I can tell you from experience, when people give you cars like this and you deliver results like this, the customer is so awestruck because they were so used to seeing it being so disgusting that you almost look like this larger than life sort of detailing superhero. And I can promise you, this becomes a very powerful word of mouth tool. This kind of customer is going to talk a lot. And so while it's easy to focus on the negative aspects of taking on jobs like this, it really does become a very powerful brand builder for you, especially in the beginning stages. And the last major advantage I see to something like this is that you guys saw the most expensive machine I've pulled out here is my steamer. I didn't even use an extractor, partly because I didn't need to, and partly because the Impossible carpeting is not actually traditional carpeting that needs to be extracted. There's much better ways to go about it. But barring all of that, my point is using something simple like a non-abrasive scrub pad, magic erasers, the right chemical, that is really what the brunt of this detail, that's what I used for the brunt of this detail. I mean, very, very inexpensive tools, products, and machines, and getting incredible results. It's one of the benefits of really dirty vehicles like this. You don't have to have the most expensive machinery. Even something as simple as a magic eraser just does wonders, and the average person, again, doesn't understand these strategies and or doesn't want to, and that is where your expertise comes in, and there's a serious price tag attached to that. Guys, if you want to check out any of the products or the tools that I used in this video, I will hook up a very organized list of all of that stuff below. Those are affiliate links, so yes, I do get a commission off of anything you buy through those links. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Wilson Auto Detailing channel, but you love videos like this, smash the subscribe button. And guys, as you enjoy looking at the after result here, thank you so much for watching. And as always from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I'll see you guys in the next video.